Hello and welcome to another edition of the Time Flies podcast. I am your host, Dariel. I have a very, very special guest with me. I got my guy, Micah, in the building. Micah, what's up, man?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here. Anytime that I can take time out of my day to talk about the NBA, especially when it comes to previewing a massive incoming season with a plethora of talent in the league, it's a pleasure of mine and glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this, man. Before we get into it, I wanted to give the listeners and viewers, whoever's going to be checking this episode out, I wanted to give them a little bit of a backstory of how we got together. So Micah and I were in a Twitter group chat, basically just an NBA group chat, and I posted a clip of one of my other episodes talking about KD being a top 3 player in the league. I still stand by that. I'm going to stand on it. Micah might disagree with me, but we just started going back and forth. And next thing you know, I invited him on the pod, and here we are.
As always, it is great to be here. And yeah, you want to go ahead and just jump into it, starting with our Eastern Conference projections of where we think teams will actually stand this season?
My guy, let's get into it. So yeah, we're gonna go through the Eastern Conference first. We're gonna give our takes from where each team is gonna land. We're gonna go from the worst team, from number 15, to who we think was gonna be the number 1 seed. So I'll go first. For the 15th seed, I have the Indiana Pacers landing at the 15th seed. So part of the reason it's the Pacers, and right now they just don't have a lot of talent. They're not terrible. I actually saw them play a preseason game, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. They have pieces. They have Duarte. They have obviously Halliburton, who they traded for, who's pretty much going to be the face of the franchise now. And also, there's this whole thing going on around Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. The rumors of them being traded to LA for Russ. We don't know if that's going to happen. So they're kind of in limbo. Um, I have them at 15. Am I going to put money on that? I won't, because they might land a little higher, like 14th or 13th, something crazy. But for me personally, that's the reason why I have the Indiana Pacers at 15. Rick Carlisle, great coach, but right now just not a lot of talent. And the East got better. We should say that the NBA just got better with a lot of talent and all these offseason moves. Micah, you want to go?
Yeah, I totally echo everything that you say and actually agree here. I also have the Indiana Pacers as
Oh,
the top
nice.
leader of the Eastern Conference. Currently, their win total is set at an over-under of 23.5. So obviously, if you bet the over, they have to win at least 24 games in order for you to profit. But honestly, I see a lot when it comes to the Vegas forecasting, as well as my take on this team. As you mentioned, they are lacking in terms of roster talent. Halliburton is an above average lead engine in this league. However,
Right.
you're still not talking about a borderline all-star, or excuse me, borderline superstar. You're talking about a guy who continues to make leaps and bounds in his game, but still has some deficiencies that he's not able to overcome when it comes to the rest of the roster. You mentioned the Buddy Hield and Miles Turner storm cloud looming over the team. That's something that can damage the internal chemistry of a team, especially when both of these guys have been talked about in trade rumors for years now.
Yeah.
Obviously, Hield came over last season from the Kings alongside Tyrese Halliburton, but it was expected at the time that only one of those two would stick around long term in Indiana, and clearly Halliburton is the better of the two players. So if that trade is to go down at some point, especially before the middle of the season, you have to understand the pros and cons of taking on Russell Westbrook and his contract.
Mm.
So if
Mm-mm-mm.
you're going to take that on, you have to get probably the 27 and 29 first round pick as well from the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers have been resistant to giving up one, if not both of those picks in any deal, unless it's to acquire Kyrie Irving or a player of that caliber.
Right.
So I have seen the Lakers win a title with LeBron, AD, and a bunch of role players. So if Turner and Hield are going to be the guys that can help move the needle, that's probably a move that you could see happen. But when it comes to the Indiana Pacers, I agree with everything you said, and I expect them to finish last. And one of the reasons why I don't think that's necessarily a horrible thing this year is going into this NBA season, one of the more crucial storylines that we will see play out is Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
We have spoken at length, not you and I, but in
Yeah.
other places about his potential upside and how even by taking the risk of punting on a season in order to play that risk out, he is one of the 3 or 4 most hyped NBA prospects ever. 2 of those 3 are LeBron James and Lou Alcindor, aka Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 2 of the arguable greatest players ever, as well as Zion Williamson. So if you have a chance to land a guy like that, you can instantly change the future of your franchise and honestly add up to $500 million almost instantly when it comes to ticket sales, revenue, everything that basically Indiana has not had since they had a young Paul George. So for all those reasons, having a terrible offseason as well as having, I guess, incoming season where I don't think they will be a good team at all is not necessarily a horrible thing going into this year specifically.
Do you think? I don't think they're gonna actively tank though. I think they're gonna try and be competitive. Or what do you think?
So when it comes to being competitive for a team that shouldn't win games, what that actually looks like is you play your starters for a good 30 to 35 minutes up until the last couple of minutes of the game. But this is a team who is going to be underdogs in most of the games that they will be playing.
True.
For example, if they were right now, as Vegas forecasts, if they were to play the Detroit Pistons or the Orlando Magic in their home building, they would be a home underdog. So unless something were to change at this point, they're going to try to be competitive, but there's only so high that you can climb in the standings, given the fact that this is just not going to be a good team.
This is true, my man. Also, for the listeners, I should say, Micah is the betting lingo guy of this episode. I'm going to keep it more just eye test and just off-season moves and all that stuff. So we get a best of both worlds. But you want to move on?
Absolutely.
All right. Do you want to go first or you want me to keep it going?
Yeah, I can take this next one.
Go ahead. Who you got?
Another team who I'm about to get into, who I think has a solid group of young talent, but at the same time, they don't really have a clear number one piece unless Paolo Banchero becomes that. And I am, of course, talking about the Orlando Magic, who coming to this season, there are basically 2 different doors that they can go down, which is one of them is committing to the tank and understanding that they still have a chance to land a guy like Victor Wembanyama, who, if you can get a player of that caliber, knowing that you already have Paolo as well as Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, which over the offseason, the Orlando Magic, who I credit their Twitter and social game department, they were making an only Franz just because they were that much of a big fan of Franz Wagner and everything that he brings to the table. So, yes, this is a team who is going to struggle again this season. I mentioned they would be even a road favorite in Indiana. That's saying something, considering Indiana is currently, according to Vegas, projected to finish with the 2nd worst record in the NBA, only behind San Antonio.
Oof.
But yeah, at this point, over under for the Orlando Magic set at 26.5 wins, just 3 higher than Indiana. I think that that's probably underselling them in terms of the way that they could go if they were to be competitive this season, try to battle for a play-in spot. But this is one of those things that we're going to get into and probably see after about 10 or 12 games is if teams do not look like they are ready to be competitive out of the chute, they may commit to more of a selling idea for this season. And if they can acquire draft picks or capital in order to be able to move down in the standings and be able to land Victor Wembanyama, that's going to be one of the more critical storylines of this entire season. If teams don't feel like they can battle for even the 1 through 8 field, where after you've made it through the play-in, if teams don't feel like they are prepared to get to that level yet, then you may see teams go full tank.
Yeah, I mean, the Magic, I'll talk about the Magic when they come up. So my 14th is actually Detroit Pistons.
Okay.
So between the Pacers, Pistons, and the next team, I'm going to say the team that I have 13th is actually Orlando. So for the 14th, Detroit Pistons, again, I could flip-flop it. I don't think either team's going to go higher than 13th. So the Detroit Pistons, I could see landing at the 13th spot. Not really a big difference. But just the 14th spot, Cade Cunningham, 2nd year, very solid rookie year. He's going to have I feel like he's going to have a solid NBA career, aside from injuries, hopefully not. He put on some weight this offseason. And I like his game. His game is very like I kind of want to say like it's a little bit of an old school kind of like he plays at his own pace. He's not super athletic. The athleticism doesn't jump out at you, but he knows what he's doing. And for a second year player, I like the way he's carrying himself. Another addition that they added is Jaden or Jalen.
Jaden Ivey.
Jaden Ivey. Yeah.
Yep.
Jaden Ivey. He's actually I saw a couple episodes ago, the Talking Heads were talking about Rookie of the Year, and they threw his name in there. And seeing him play preseason, like solid, he has a great athleticism, great highlights. He cares on the defensive end. I mean, he's a rookie, so he's gonna try and show off. Like he's gonna give his energy for every possession, everything. But I mean, the Detroit Pistons, they also, they're gonna end at the lower half of the conference, but they have some talent. Cade Cunningham, like I said, Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, who's a big man. He doesn't jump out at you with all the talent that he has, but he's a solid like hustle player. He runs up and down the floor, he gets rebounds, and he's like a garbage man. Everybody knows him because of the thing with LeBron James last season. But I'm trying to think of. Can you think of another one from Detroit Pistons? Somebody else?
Yeah, which I will go ahead and get into the Detroit Pistons now if it's my turn to take the floor.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, you go.
I'm a bit higher on this team than I would say most are. I'll go ahead and give a short spiel, but they're going to come up a little later in my end of this broadcast because I have them confidently hitting the over, and it's one of my near locks going into this season. Currently, their total is set at 29.5, so 6 ahead of Orlando, or excuse me, 6 ahead of Indiana and 3 ahead of Orlando. And one of the reasons why I confidently say they are going to hit the over, one of the more forgotten trades that we saw this past offseason was the Bojan Bogdanovic move to the Detroit Pistons.
Right.
Being able to add shooting as well as Sadiq Bey, who is expected to make another jump, alongside Cade Cunningham, as well as you now have a pick and roll partner, pick and pop guy with Isaiah Stewart. This team has more upside in terms of being able to get into that play-in and be able to, honestly, one of the bold predictions I have going into this entire season is that the Detroit Pistons are going to be in the 1 through 8 playing field when it comes time to 7-game series in the East.
1 through 8, huh?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, so when it comes to 29.5 wins, I think this is a team who's going to dominate the bad competition, especially in the Eastern Conference, and be able to compete against some of the middling teams in the conference. For example, Chicago, Atlanta, and Charlotte as well are teams who I have a lot more questions than I do have answers. And one of the things that I like most about this Detroit Pistons team is you mentioned Cade Cunningham's old school style when it comes to being able to run pick and roll. He has a nice step back. He's put on a little weight and looks like he's going to be able to be a better finisher at the rim, which was one of his deficiencies last year.
True.
If all of those do come true, you are now talking about a team that has a legit number one anchor in the backcourt, which is something that we've seen with Luka Doncic, Steph Curry. I'm not saying that Cade is going to get to that level even this coming season or at any point in the future, but we have seen guys take massive strides forward, even in their second seasons, a la Anthony Edwards and Ja Morant. If Cade is to get to that level, you'll see a boost right away in his career. I think knowing that he went number one last year, he's going to take that step forward, knowing that he has been a guy for his entire life that has played under the spotlight. He was a number one recruit out of high school. He was, even his junior year of high school, he was the number one ranked point guard going to the following season. So he's always been this. And adding a legit veteran to be able to come around these guys who still contributing in a positive manner. We saw Bojan Bogdanovic lead the Jazz in scoring in a playoff game last year. So it is feasible, and I love them to hit the over and win at least 30 games.
Where are they at as far as like Vegas? What do they have for amount of wins in the season?
Yeah, so the Detroit Pistons over under is 29.5.
Oh, okay. And you have a lock for over that.
Yep, lock for over.
See, I mean, yeah, that's not crazy. It's not crazy. Like, I have them in 14 because all their players are just super young, and it takes a while for everybody to learn how to win in the NBA. That's a real thing.
Yep.
That's why I have them low. But I it's not crazy to me to hear you say that one, you locked over wins to 29 and a half, and
Yep.
also you said 1 through 8, right? They
Yep. I think that they will advance. Yeah, it's one of the more bold things that I'll say going into this entire season is that I think this team will be in the 1 through 8 field. And yes, they're probably going to get smacked in the first round. But that's saying a lot given the fact that this team was a lottery team each of the last 2 years, had the #1 overall pick. And we've
true.
seen guys with this skill set of Cade Cunningham be able to take their next steps because he's not an undersized guard. So you're not talking about a guy who still struggles with his jump shot. He's actually gotten better in that regard. He was a 40% deep shooter in college. He was a 40% deep shooter all the way up until his first season in the NBA. And look, not everyone's going to be Steph Curry. There's only one Steph Curry. So, given the fact that he is going to get better because we've seen, unless a guy is just an obvious bust right away as a #1 overall pick, they have the physical tools as well as the fortitude, the drive, and the coaching, honestly, has gotten better for the Detroit Pistons over this last season. There were times last year when they could have given up, but they actually continued to play, and they guard wings about as well as any team that's outside of the premier teams in the league. And adding in Bojan Bogdanovic, a legit second contributor, alongside Cade is going to take his game to new levels because you now have to guard the perimeter as well as guard the corners, which the corner 3-point shot has become the most dynamic shot in all of basketball outside of a dunk or a layup or free throw. And
Yeah.
that's something that Boyan does better. He's made more corner threes than anybody in the league over the last 2 years.
Want to move on?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So I'll go with my number 13th pick. My 13th pick is the Orlando Magic. So I want to piggyback on a lot of the things that you said. Paulo Banchero, front runner for Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
I saw him play at Duke. I mean, I remember during like March Madness and times throughout the season where people were kind of questioning that if he wanted to be the guy, like if he wanted to take that mantle. But seeing him play in the preseason a couple times, like he's a rookie, so I just feel like maybe people are expecting a little bit too much out of him out of the rookie year. Like I've heard people say that he's definitely going to be the Rookie of the Year, and honestly, I don't know if it's 100%. There's a lot of rookies coming in this season where, like Jaden Ivey, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it. He's a really good player. And also Franz
Yeah.
Franz Wagner.
Yeah, Franz Wagner.
Dude, he's impressing me, man. Last season, strong rookie campaign. Like he was like in the beginning of the season, he was like kind of under the radar, but like I don't know how I was able to watch some Orlando highlights maybe the first half of the season, and I'm like, yo, this kid plays hard. He has a nice body. He has a nice game, and he's athletic. He's surprisingly more athletic than people give him. His brother Mo Wagner from Michigan, not too shabby. He can spread the floor, big man. He's playing pretty well. Playing pretty well in the preseason as well. But man, Franz Wagner, like for his second season, I think he's really gonna come on very, very solid. Hopefully he's able to keep progressing. I don't know about taking the next step forward, but just keep progressing. The second season, my eyes they're gonna be looking for Orlando a little bit more. I want to see what their nucleus is gonna look like. Mo Bamba, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony. I believe Gary Harris is on the team, right? Or am I bugging?
Gary Harris Jr.
Yeah.
That hadn't even crossed my mind, but yes, I believe he's on the team. Yeah, he is still there. And even after multiple season-ending injuries, he is still somehow an NBA player.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he's able to come back this season because I mean he was a good player for the Nuggets.
He was a terrific player.
Yeah.
There was a time when he was a 19-point per game scorer in this league. Is that so crazy to remember?
Right.
There was a time when people actually questioned whether or not Jamal Murray would usurp him as the lead guard in that backcourt.
Right, that's true. I remember that. That little back and forth that people were having with them too.
Yep.
Man, so yeah, Orlando, I have him 13th, but Again, I wouldn't be surprised if they land a little bit higher, maybe like 11 or 10. Maybe 10 might be a little too much. Maybe like 11. I'll put their ceiling at maybe 11 because they are super young. Um, and again, it kind of shows you like I think the last three teams that I've been talking about, it shows you that I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. So it shows you that they have talent. It's just that they're young. They have to learn how to win, and they just need a little bit more experience.
So
So
you mentioned that, excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off
no,
there.
you good. Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that Paolo Banchero was a near lock to win the Rookie of the Year. At least you think so. So does Vegas. Vegas totally agrees with you. They have his futures odds to win Rookie of the Year plus 150, which means that your standard $10 bet, if you were to bet $10 now on Paolo winning the Rookie of the Year, you would only win 15 in return if he wins it because they think that it's a near lock. The next closest player is plus 550, which is Keegan Murray. So
Mm-hmm.
unless you were to make a long shot bet on a guy like that where $10 profits to make 55 if he were to win, Vegas thinks that all of the money is going to go on Paolo because he's going to be the guy who is given the most opportunities as a rookie. And normally that's the thing that set some rookies apart from recent guys, or excuse me, guys in recent years. Unless you happen to get a Zion Williamson, a Ja Morant, or a Luka Doncic, guys who are, even after the rookie season, clearly going to become borderline, if not superstars at some point in their career. You have to just give the Rookie of the Year to the guy who puts up the most counting numbers because
Right.
oftentimes these guys are not going to be on good teams.
Right.
They're not going to be on teams that are pushing for a play-in spot, or whether it be a team that somehow gets to 500. Those guys just rarely exist in this league. So oftentimes you will see the Rookie of the Year goes to the guy who just puts up the best numbers on a bad team.
Real quick.
So
Oh, my bad.
yeah,
Go ahead. No, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Finish up. No, go ahead,
Oh
Micah.
yeah, I was gonna go ahead and move on to my 12th seed in or excuse me, my 13th seed in
Right.
the Eastern Conference, which I was gonna get to Detroit later, but yeah, as you can tell, they're gonna be in at least the play-in.
Right.
So I actually have the Charlotte Hornets here. I expect
Okay.
them to take steps backwards because they haven't addressed much of their needs when it comes to a defensive big in the middle. So they're once again going to be a bad team on that end. And we can't put aside this Miles Bridges looming
Mm-hmm.
storm cloud.
Yeah.
This is something that I expect to take away from what I would love to see, which is a LaMelo Ball continued leap. I love watching him. And I will still watch these guys if there's nothing else to do and no better games on just a Wednesday night in January. But what I will say is Miles Bridges was the second most important part of this entire team.
100%.
And for a team that already has deficiencies when it comes to their wing depth, and I don't love the way that Terry Rozier continues to take away from LaMelo. Currently, I would love to see a legit shooter alongside LaMelo. I think that's one of the ways to bring his game to the next level versus another guy that's focused on slashing more as a guard. I think that LaMelo's best attributes are his ability to go downhill and find corners as well as wing shooters. That's not really something that this team has. They finished in the bottom 10 last year in 3-point percentage and were bottom half the league in 3-point makes. So unless you're going to get a huge boost from somewhere that I don't see, this is one of the teams that I expect to hit their under win total, which currently Detroit is at 29.5, Charlotte is at 35.5, 6 wins ahead of them projected. I expect that to go the opposite direction, and I don't think that this team will be in the play-in again.
So you have the under in the Charlotte Hornets. It's not a lock, is it? Or
It's not one of my locks, no. But
okay.
if I were to bet this, I would probably stay away and not bet it. But if I was
Right,
going to
right.
lean one way, it would certainly be the under.
I feel you. Okay, so your 13th is my 12th. So I have Charlotte Hornets at number 12. You were talking about LaMelo Ball. Are we sure he's a good player? Well,
Well,
not,
okay,
not a good
define good.
player. No, no,
Define
no,
define good.
no,
Like
no,
if you
no.
were to go back and redraft, would you take him ahead of Ant? Probably not for number one. At the time, I was vouching for LaMelo going number one, and I totally think that the jury is still out on that for a redraft of that draft. But what I will say is Ant showed a lot last year when it came to using his size to his advantage, even if there are some mental lapses where you just realize the guy's still young and he's getting
Yeah.
better, he's developing. You just got to get more game reps in the NBA. that's one of the things that I think LaMelo has not benefited from in recent years. He was one of the bottom ranking guys among the consensus top 50 players in fourth quarter minutes this past season. And that's really concerning given the fact that his team was actually in games and they still were not giving the rock. If there's something that the coaching staff has had a quarrel with, or whether it be another player on the team, I think that this team just has more questions than they do answers. And this Miles Bridges thing is going to really eat at them in the wrong way, because you don't have the guy who was your legit number two, even if I say the word legit, but I put air quotes around that because there's no way of knowing he's going to become a future star wing player like we know is the most dynamic mold of a player in today's game.
Right. So going to your point, you said how last season he was like one of the last people ranked in fourth quarter minutes. Do you remember the coach's name? I forgot his name. He got fired.
Oh, yes.
I forgot his name. But I mean, while you look it up, I'll just keep going with my point. So yeah, that brings me to my next question. Does he care? Right now in LaMelo Ball's career, what is he? He's third season. This is going to be his third season.
Yes, he's going to his third season. Yeah, as head coach James Borrego.
Right.
Yeah,
and I remember he was
last season, and it didn't get any better though. James Borrego actually had, for what it's worth, a decent 4-year stretch by Charlotte Hornets standards, but that's also not saying much considering this is a team that has historically been one of the most embarrassing in the league.
Yeah, I mean, right now, LaMelo Ball, like, I get it. Third season, he's still young, okay. But to me, I just feel like he's a little bit more of a flashy player than a substance player. And I don't know if he cares. Like, it's LaMelo Ball's team. Everybody knows it. He's the face of the franchise. Like, I want to see you give a shit a little bit more. Like, right now, he's just all about no-look passes, cool passes, and honestly, like, sometimes he makes more news off the court with, like, what he's wearing and, like, the jewelry. So that's one of the questions that I have with this team. LaMelo Ball, face of the franchise. I want to see him give a shit a little bit more. So the next thing, real quick, I want to bring up about the Charlotte Hornets. Gordon Hayward has not worked out whatsoever. Like, injury prone, insane, and it's unfortunate because as soon as he had that Boston Celtic injury on the first night of the opening season, like, I feel like he's been cursed ever since, man. Like, he's just been not healthy ever since he basically broke his leg or ankle. And it's unfortunate because he had a great career with the Utah Jazz. He was there for a while. He made all-star teams, was the leader and leading the team into playoffs, advancing throughout the playoffs. So Gordon Hayward, you just don't know right now. He's a big question mark. We don't know if he's going to be able to play, 60 games in a season. He hasn't been able to do that in so long. So hopefully he's able to get better. Hopefully he's able to play a whole season. And also Steve Clifford. So they re-signed Steve Clifford. Kind of a lateral movement. Like, he was the coach for the team a few seasons ago. I get it. Like, he's a more defensive-minded coach, and he actually brought them to the playoffs, I believe, with Kemba on the team. So I get the movement, but at the same time, it's like he's not Phil Jackson, or he's not like Pat Riley. He's not like one of these coaches where you can look at and be like, okay, he's going to bring us over the hill. He's going to take us to the top of the mountain. Like, if anything, he might be able to make them a play-in team, but I don't see – that's a big maybe. So that's all I got on the Charlotte Hornets, man. That's my number 12 pick. You want to go for number 11? Or no,
sure.
This is number 12th or 11th?
It'll be I'll do 12 and then 11. Yeah, I'll go through 12 pretty quickly, which I think is probably a consensus pick for around this time in the NBA standings, numbers and projections, which is, I think Vegas got this perfectly on the Washington Wizards, also at 36.5 wins. This is essentially where I feel they are going to end up as well. This is a team that has been a bottom feeder for much of their franchise history, and then they were able to squeak into the playoffs with Russ and Bradley Beal. Now their hope is that Monte Morris and Will Barton can breathe new life into them. But I will say, I loved watching KCP. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the entire league. And everything that he has done for them has been understated and overlooked. I think that they're going to miss some of those defensive pieces that they have needed in recent years, because offense has really not been their issue. They just have no rim protection. And Roy Hachimura has been one of the more disappointing players when it comes to his ability to get better from the perimeter, scoring off the dribble, catch, and shooting 3-pointers. But this is one of those teams where I would say probably stay away and don't bet it, because Washington has notoriously been a team that's actually these past few years performed almost exactly the same as they are projected to. I don't see any
Right.
difference this season unless Bradley Beal were to come through on his promise of, oh, I want to stay here, I want to win here, this is the team that is going to
Sheesh.
follow me my entire career. Really, dude? I'm not saying that we're getting to Damian Lillard territory here, but at some point you do have to look yourself in the mirror and understand that you are not a superstar, but you still have some good years left, and you can be a valuable contributor as potentially a Robin on a really good team in the NBA and make up that nucleus. But that's not going to happen in Washington, and I expect this team to win around 36.5 games, which is what they are projected to, and they are going to be right in that 11-12 spot again.
So Bradley Beal, a solidified number 2 would be great for you.
I think, okay, so he's past his hill in terms of his absolute peak at this point. But if you were to put him alongside a quality, or excuse me, not a quality, a superstar big in the league, like for example, are we thinking about the Milwaukee Bucks as a juggernaut title favorite versus just one of, if not the best teams, if you were to swap him for Drew Holiday at this point?
If Bradley Beal goes to the Bucks and it's Giannis and Bradley Beal instead of Giannis and Drew Holiday,
And yeah,
would
just Middleton is still there too.
they be considered a juggernaut? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I'd say no. That's me personally. I don't think they'll be I don't think they'll be the favorite to win. I don't. They'll be top 3, but they won't be number 1.
Fair. I mean, by most people's accounts, they're already top 3, regardless of how you look at them. I mean, they're one of those teams where you basically know going into the season what you're going to get from them. They may mess around and still win 60 games, but at the same time, they have enough shooting. They have better depth going into the season. Obviously, we'll get into the Bucks later, but
yeah. I feel like I kind of stumped you when I said. I feel like I kind of stumped you when I said, like, I don't think they would be a juggernaut with Bradley Beal on the team.
It's kind of a shocking take, I will admit, but
what has Bradley Beal proved?
He hasn't had the opportunity to prove anything. That's my point.
I don't know, man. He went to the playoffs with John Wall a few times, especially that semis disappointment against Boston.
I'm saying he's never played alongside a guy where he is clearly and obviously the second best player. Now that he's gotten to the point in his career where he can actually contribute to winning given the right situation. But what I'm saying is he needs to understand that that's just not going to happen in Washington. They're not going to bring in another huge free agent to the point where he can become the number 2 alongside a superstar. So moving on to my number 11 team, I'm actually fully out this season on the Chicago Bulls. I think it's got worse. And this Lonzo Ball situation of him not being able to walk or get any drills done or getting better with that knee at all is really disappointing, because he was a fantastic player for them to start last season, and they imploded on the defensive end. They actually were top 10 in defensive rating all the way through the first month and a half of the season. Then as soon as he went down and Alex Caruso went down, you started to look at them as a team that just has 2 different but not really complementary offensive weapons in DeRozan and Levine. But at the same time, they were getting gashed on the perimeter defensively. They had no way to slow down any of those guys. And when Patrick Williams came back, he was not what we thought he would be, which was, people were mentioning like a poor man's Kawhi Leonard, even in the same sentence of Patrick Williams. That's not what you got when he returned. You saw them not really flame out in the first round, because you can't fault a team that is just clearly not as good as the other team, losing in 5 games. But this is a team who I thought they were going to be the favorite for going to this offseason, aside from the Utah Jazz, to trade for and acquire Rudy Gobert, which would have been the perfect big to put alongside these guys, where you just have the best backstop in the entire NBA. But that's not the case at this point, and they are going to be probably a bad defensive team again. Even if you have Alex Caruso, who's able to take away 2 to 3 points a night if he's playing 30 minutes, that's not enough for this team, who's going to finish as one of the worst rebounding teams in the league. They were dead last in defensive rebounding last season among teams that squeaked in to the play-in. And they actually were one of the 2 teams that actually made the play-in last year with a negative point differential. So I don't expect this team to be much better, if at all. And their over-under win total of 41.0, which is Vegas is projecting them to be a 500 team. That's probably pretty right, but
Yeah.
there's one more team that I think that they are not quite as good as, that others are probably the opposite direction. So I would go under slightly, but I don't expect this team to be going in the right direction.
I feel you on that, man. I'm gonna talk about the Bulls a little bit later. So okay, that was your 11th. That was your 12th and 11th, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna go 11 and 10, and then you can do 2 at a time. It's all good.
Yeah.
So okay, so my number 11, I have actually the Washington Wizards. So hopefully we'll get a full year of Bradley Beal and Porzingis, but Porzingis is already injured. Like he tweaked his ankle. I don't know, so maybe it's not a huge injury, but the fact that he got injured again, it's like, bro, come on. Going back to the Knicks trade from Knicks to Dallas, I was one of the people that was like, good. Like, he's not gonna last. Like, he's 7'3", he's on the wing. And as the first 2 seasons, I remember watching him, and he was just like, he was crashing the boards, and he was like, which is great, he's showing effort. But like at his size, like obviously a lot of players at his size, 7'3", they don't last. Their bodies don't last. And what happened? What happened when he went? Right before he went to Dallas, what happened? He tore his ACL. Then he went to Dallas, couldn't get along with Luka, and then came to Washington, and he hasn't had a full season with Bradley Beal. He's never taken that step. He's never become the player that everybody thinks he was going to be. So, and Bradley, I mean, as far as like the other pieces, I mean, yeah, like you said, Will Barton, Monte Morris, right?
Yep. Monte Morris.
Monte Morris is like he's a solid point guard, but like, and Will Barton's a solid player, but doesn't move the needle. I do like Gafford though. I like their big man. I've been watching him play, very athletic, up and down, aggressive. I mean, I think we didn't even talk about Kyle Kuzma. He's such an interesting player, man, because he has the talent to take these next steps, but like he just hasn't. And then you can also point to like the Laker system, the Kobe years, the LeBron years. Like you could point to that as an excuse, but like this season, like he has to show us that like, yo, he's a legit NBA player. You can't have any excuses. You can't have any like, maybe he's gonna be, maybe he's not. Like he needs to put his foot forward and be like, no, I'm here. I'm one of the better players in the league, and show us. So.
Well, okay, I would say the one player that I can think of in recent years who was actually able to turn their career around and go from being a guy that was just underwhelming and quite frankly deemed a bust to becoming a legitimately really good player in this league is Andrew Wiggins, and it's because he got a new scenery.
Yeah.
So Kyle Kuzma at this point is basically a guy that he is what he is. He's not a star in the league. He's not a bad player. But he's not, as you mentioned, a guy that's going to move the needle for any team. He's not going to add 5 to 10 wins onto a team just by virtue of having him on the floor. So I don't expect this team to be as good as probably most people think. But that's, a question, obviously, going into the season. Then, your 10 or 11 team coming in.
No, I'm going to go number 10 right now. So number 10, the first team that's going to be eligible for the play-in, got the New York Knicks, baby. I got the Knicks at 10. I should put a disclaimer. I'm not a Knicks fan. I'm from New York, born and raised. I want to see the Knicks do well for my entire life. I'm begging just to see them do well. So going back to the 10th seeded Knicks, one thing that obviously people are talking about Jalen Brunson, the pickup. It's arguably a good contract, not a good contract. I'll get into that later. But one of the things that's going to be very, very important for this team, Derrick Rose coming back healthy. And the season that they went to the playoffs, Derrick Rose was a big part. And you could look at that as like, if Derrick Rose is a big part of your team, where are you going? I get it. But just for the Knicks, getting that playoff experience, New York was going crazy. I remember that first round against Trae Young. Like Derrick Rose was a big piece, and unfortunately they lost. But Derrick Rose brings that veteran wisdom. He's been through a lot, obviously, with the injuries and not knowing if he's going to be the same player. He helps Emmanuel quickly Quickly is one of the better point guards in the league, up and coming, man. I love his athleticism, his ball handling. I love how he pushes the ball on the floor. Him and Obi Toppin have amazing chemistry. Obi Toppin is another one that I love. I am so thankful that they did not give up those two and RJ Barrett, which was the rumored trade for Donovan Mitchell. I am ecstatic that they actually stuck to their guns, because before in the past, the Knicks would have gave that up, and then Donovan Mitchell, whatever. Maybe we'll get into that a little later. But RJ Barrett, the second half of last season, he was taking the good steps forward. He was being more aggressive, going to the rim, and he's the only player between him and Julius Randle that can show us that he has a right hand instead of lefty. Julius Randle being your best player, that's not going to get you far. And him making the All-NBA team during that playoff season, like, I think now we can say that was kind of a fluke.
Well, not only a fluke now, if you were to go back through NBA history, is there an argument to be made that he is the worst second-team All-NBA player ever?
Sheesh.
It's one of those one-year flukes where you look at him and he's a 41% deep shooter. He's never been even an average three-point shooter any other season in his entire career.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, Julius Randle being your best player on the team, I don't know how far that can get you. Going back to D Rose real quick, did you hear what he said in the press conference a couple of days ago? He was just saying how he matured and like he's been through a lot of stuff, and like he let go of all his ego. He knows he's not the same superstar anymore. Like, it took time for him to realize that, and now he's comfortable with where he is. I mean, you could obviously see that from the last couple seasons that he's been playing, but him saying it out loud, talking to the New York media, like, everybody loves him, man. Everybody loves him. Put aside the fact that he said what he said in the press conference. Everybody loves him just because of seeing him, what he did with all his injuries, what he had to overcome, being able to drop 50 when he was with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like, I have a lot of respect for that guy, man. And I think he's really going to be a big help for the Knicks. Jalen Brunson, again, he's a question mark for me because, yeah, he did his thing against the Utah Jazz, but it was the Utah Jazz. They're, as far as like being a defensive team, they've always been a joke. And the Utah Jazz have always been a regular season team to me in the playoffs. I always known they were going to choke. And once again, they did last season. Jalen Brunson put up his numbers, but that was with Luka Doncic being out of the game. So he had more space to do what he wanted to do. I mean, it's going to help the Knicks. Again, I have them number 10 being the first team is eligible for the play-in tournament. You got Obi Toppin, you got Quentin Grimes as well. Quentin Grimes is another piece that I'm looking forward to. He toward the latter part of the season, he was coming on strong. He had a great summer league as well. So that's my number 10. New York Knicks. Don't disappoint me. Micah, you're up, my guy.
Wow. What I will say is I love the assessment of the team because I echo everything that you've just said and agree. They actually come in as my 10 seed as well. My 9 is, the Detroit Pistons, who I think are going to finish in the 9 in the regular season. So, yes, I'll go ahead and talk briefly about the Knicks before jumping into some of the other teams that I have coming up. But the 10-seeded Knicks going into the playoffs after this season, I expect this team to be a little bit better than where they were last year.
True.
They took leaps and bounds when it came from being one of the best teams defensively in the NBA 2 seasons ago without an actual offensive engine versus now you have Jalen Brunson coming in, who we can have the question whether or not you think he was overpaid. Well, True. One thing is for certain, he was paid to be a lead guard. That's the money in terms of the standard for a non-true max guy in the league, but one of those near contracts where you go, you're getting the Tyler Hero money. You are expecting the Tyler Hero, probably the Jordan Poole money that's coming up too, where it's not a true max, but it is paying a guy enough money to be able to tell him, we expect you to add a few wins, at least a handful of games onto the end of our season and be able to take us to this next level. Because when they went up against the Atlanta Hawks 2 seasons ago, it was obvious that they didn't really have any offensive identity, and they made the playoffs as truly a defensive team that was dominating one way, but had no way of manufacturing points in a tighter contested playoff environment where everybody knows the scouting report on everybody and they guard you differently than they do in the regular season. So now you bring in another lefty to this team where you're going to be overloading on one half of the floor. but being able to add more shooting, I like the fact that, I like the fact that you mentioned that they didn't pull the string on the Donovan Mitchell move. However, there were reports that came out after the trade was over with Cleveland that the New York Knicks believed that their package was better, and that if they had known that the Jazz were going to take a little bit less of a deal to trade him somewhere else, then they would not have even gone all out for him anyway. So they decided to stand pat, and we'll see whether or not it pays off this season, because Jalen Brunson is not going to be probably good enough to push you over the top as your best player, but you can have one of those trio tandems where you have Brunson, Randall, and Barrett, where if all of them are clicking, you could have a team that's not in the special category, but you could have a team that could mess around and potentially even take some games off one of the top seeds in the East.
Yeah, man. All right, so let's keep it moving. Do you want to go number 9?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go. I mean, yeah, New York, I had a 10-9 was Detroit. I talked about them earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to my 8 seed, which I think is probably the consensus opinion on them, and I don't feel any different. It's the Atlanta Hawks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I'm a bit lower probably than I thought most people would be. However, I think most people at this point probably agree. The DeJounte Murray and Trae Young fit, I have questions. I also have questions about whether or not people are calling this team a team with a big 3. Since when do you put John Collins in the category of star?
Hell no.
He's one of the guys in this league where he's also, like I mentioned, a guy who you know what you're going to get, and he is what he is at this point. But still, that's an above average, really good player, but that's not a star. That's not a big 3 that you're talking about. Also, at the same time, DeJounte Murray has never been a player who's expected to produce on a winning team at all. So we know that he can put up numbers when he's never really been given the keys to a kingdom where there are actual expectations and there is protocol, and you actually have to play to your contract. So the question of the fit alongside him and Trae Young, I have more questions than answers myself, because DeJounte Murray is not a good shooter, and Trae Young has never been a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. So the idea that Trae Young will just become one of these off-ball pure scorers like a Bradley Beal or a Devin Booker or even Zach LaVine, all of those guys are really good catch and shoot players, and that's what makes them perfect alongside their lead point guards. So at this point, the idea that Trae Young will just become a locomotive off-ball Steph Curry type, you're not going to see it. It's not going to happen. It's one of the reasons why in the Western Conference, the idea that Anthony Simons and Damian Lillard are going to click better than Lillard and McCollum ever did, it's ludicrous to me, because both of those guys are good at different things, but they're not complementary pieces in the backcourt. So for those reasons, I'm a bit lower on the Atlanta Hawks. I also think at this point we've seen the best of Clint Capella, and those days are behind him. Unless you're going to see DeAndre Hunter or some of these other guys that they just need to step up and be able to fill out that roster and complement what their deficiencies are on the defensive end, this is not one of those teams that I expect to continue to get to where they could be, even though, they were obviously in the 1-8 last year, and they were in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago, as shocking as it may be to think that was so recent. But I'm out on them.
I feel you. All right, so that was your number 8. I'm gonna go number 9 and number 8 to catch up. So my number 9, I'm a little bit higher on this team than you are. I actually have the Chicago Bulls, not that much higher, but I have them at number 9. And they've actually made some pretty good offseason moves. They picked up Goran Dragic. I mean, he's older. I know he's a lot closer to the end of his career, but again,
he said that after last season he was mulling retirement, and I would assume that maybe he does retire after this year. Yeah,
absolutely. But, veteran leadership and a solid backup point guard at this point. So, and Andre Drummond, man, he's a solid big. He's not one of these bigs that's going to change the franchise. He's not going to be an all-star every single season. But if you need a big to protect the rim who can run up and down, like Andre Drummond is not a bad pickup. It's not terrible. Me personally.
it's not terrible, but I'm not saying that he is a more mobile guy than Nikola Vucevic, who obviously will still be the starter. But
Yeah, go ahead. But
what I was going to say is the idea that Drummond was ever an all-star in this league is almost shocking to me, considering that he regularly is the worst rim finishing big in the entire league. He has the most boards in the league, but that's because he's getting his own misses. And he's not really even a pick and roll or a pick and dunk partner, because he's never been a guy who's really done anything besides just crash the boards and try to get putbacks. So the team that last season shot the fewest amount of threes in the entire league needs to probably add more shooting, and I didn't see them do that much. You mentioned Goran Dragic, who's going to get in the game and play 8 to 10 minutes. Unless Lonzo Ball were to come back and get to that level that we thought he would be at, and honestly he showed signs of, I don't see it. But I didn't mean to cut you off there.
no, it's all good. Whenever you want to say something, it's all good, my boy. Yeah, Lonzo Ball. I mean, they have said that he's had the surgery to fix that problem. I think they said it's fine, and he's just rehabbing right now. We're not going to see him maybe until like December, January. But obviously, that's going to hurt him. One last thing about the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan, if DeMar DeRozan is the best player on the team, which Zach LaVine should be like smacking himself, like why is DeMar DeRozan the best player on that team? I love DeMar. His footwork is reminiscent of Kobe. Kobe was my favorite basketball player. I don't know, maybe underrated, but he's definitely slept on. People sleep on DeMar DeRozan, and then when he drops 40 on your head, you're like, where did this guy come from? But Zach LaVine needs to be the best player on this team, like unequivocally. Like when you think of Chicago Bulls, you have to think of Zach LaVine. And last season, DeMar DeRozan was breaking Wilt Chamberlain records. Like that's kind of crazy, and nobody was really expecting that. And now they have a little bit of a bullseye on their back because they know that they have some sort of talent. Caruso hopefully is going to be able to be healthy all season. I mean, last season, Grayson Allen, whatever, dirty player, kind of. I mean, he has a lot of baggage to him. So you could say that was a fluke injury, but hopefully Caruso doesn't get injured. Caruso adds a lot of more depth, not a lot, but more depth to the team, a defensive-minded player. Caruso is he's not a bad playmaker. I don't know if you want to say anything to that.
Oh no, I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay.
That was your 9 and 8.
Yeah, no, that was my number 9. I'm gonna give you number 8 right now.
Yeah.
So that was it on the Chicago Bulls. Number 8, I am in agreement with you, my boy. I have the Atlanta Hawks. I'm not really big on that trade as well. DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. I mean, Trae especially has not played off the ball since he's been in the league. He's been the guy, the primary ball handler on the team, making all the decisions. So that's definitely going to be an adjustment. That Eastern Conference Finals appearance 2 seasons ago, my God, that was a fluke, man. That was a fluke.
To think that actually happened. And you know what? We have one guy to thank for, Ben Simmons.
Literally, that's what I was going to say. Ben Simmons imploding within that series gave Atlanta Hawks the clear runway to be like, we're going to take on Giannis. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, you got to give him respect. Show respect to Atlanta Hawks.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
I'm a Jazz fan. I'm from Utah. The idea that this team was in the conference finals before the Jazz, who are notoriously known as a really well-run franchise that has just had implosion after implosion historically,
True,
is shocking and really disappointing. But you can't take anything away from a team who knocked off the 1 seed in their conference.
True. So Atlanta Hawks number 8. I mean, Trae Young. I really hope Trae Young doesn't do what James Harden and Russell Westbrook do, not change their game their entire career. I really hope Trae Young realizes that this is an amazing opportunity to grow a different skill, to grow his talent more. Because right now he's known as just this offensive player and not really much on the defensive end. Like the opportunity that he had with DeJounte Murray to actually develop chemistry, to actually develop a good, solid tandem, like it's right there for him. But I'm a little worried that he has the mentality of James Harden and Russell Westbrook. So we'll see how it plays out. That's my number 8, Atlanta Hawks. Let's move on. Micah, give me your number 7 and number 6.
Yeah. So number 7, I'll go ahead and start here with the Toronto Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
This is a team that I also don't expect them to take much in the way of a step forward, unless it's contingent on Scotty Barnes
You hit
also
it. Yep.
making immense moves in his game. Because I think that with Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and some of the other 6'8" wings, as they have just too many to even be healthy at this point, I think that this team has the makings of one of those really good small ball lineups where you can run Siakam at the 5 and you have just 4 6'8" wings that can guard multiple positions and do a lot of things on the offensive and defensive end. I love the Otto Porter Jr. addition. He was a guy who was able to resuscitate his career this past year with the Golden State Warriors. And we'll see whether or not that was just one of the Warriors flukes where you get to
Right.
play alongside Steph and Clay and there's just a million miles to work with spacing because you're playing alongside the best spacer ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if Scotty Barnes is going to make that jump. I was pretty high on him last season and expect him to get to the next level. Now people have mentioned him in the same sentence as a poor man's Giannis or the next Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that that's disrespectful to Giannis at this point because I don't think once you get to a level of that player to say that anybody is the next anything is quite frankly wrong because unless you're on that level or you're getting there and it's obvious, you can't say that unless the guy is already a proven star in the league.
True.
Yes, coming off of a great rookie season, but is he a rookie who goes down the path of I'm not done yet and there's a lot more hardware that I can accomplish? Or is it I am going to ball until I get my first contract and then I'm going to go the opposite direction? So Scotty Barnes still has to prove that he is worthy of a max contract and he has a couple of years to do that. I expect this team to be back in the playoffs, but again, I think their ceiling is probably lower than a team should be given the fact that 6'8" to 6'10" wings that can guard multiple positions and can shoot the ball well as be able to put the ball on the floor and make plays for teammates. They don't have the top end talent at this point unless Scotty gets there. I have my reserves about them, but all the teams ahead of them have a better number 1 than this team.
All right, and your number 6?
Number 6. So I'm actually going the opposite direction this way, or excuse me, on this team than a lot of people. I have the Miami Heat here.
Mm-hmm.
The Miami Heat are coming off of Game 7 of the Eastern Conference, and they were the number 1 seed in the league, or number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference last season. Their move to basically lose PJ Tucker to another Eastern Conference rival, you're losing a starter and adding that guy to another team that you're going to have to probably go through in order to get out of the East. That's something that's probably going to bite at them the wrong way. Another thing that I'm going to be looking for with this team is at what point do we realize that Tyler Hero has to now play as the second best player on the team over Bam, given the fact that he just got a bag? Whether or not you think he was overpaid or not, he now has some big shoes to fill, especially offensively, because we know that Tyler's not going to give you much in the way of anything on the defensive end. You just have to pray that he's not switched on to guarding Tatum on the wrong night. So at this point, Miami, they have this Heat culture, which everybody loves and enjoys. But at the same time, is that anything that we can say that we know actually exists besides just the warm weather and primetime games that come with playing in a big market? I'm a bit out on this team. I think that Jimmy has probably had most of his best days behind him. However, on any given night, I've said this before, Jimmy Butler is like the Paul Pierce or the Gary Payton of this era, where he's not a superstar and nobody should say that he is. However, on any given night, basically 2 games out of 7, he can look like the best player on the floor, given the fact that there could be anybody on the other team.
Yeah, no. I mean, I got Miami later. I'll talk about them. I got some things to say, but okay. So you got Miami number 6. Sheesh.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of those teams that's going to have a really high floor on the defensive end because they still have some guys that they can employ. But PJ Tucker had arguably the best season of his entire career this past year when it came to shooting the 3 ball. And you know that he's always going to be one of those dogs in the league where he guards guys that are bigger than him because he plays bigger than him. Now you have a small-ish team that's going to probably have to put Bam at the 5, which is something that he has not really wanted to do for much of his career. He's a terrific defensive player, but he's better at guarding smaller guys on the perimeter and switching 1 through 5. So they're going to have a decent team defense, but the other teams that I have ahead of them, I just think are better at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Ben has moments where he disappoints me. Like he could like the talent he has, and just like he just disappoints me, man. And then PJ Tucker, I get it, great defensive player. That's his thing. Everybody knows him as a defensive player and being a dog. But he's older. Like he's pretty up there. I think he's like what 34ish, somewhere around there.
He's in his mid-30s. Yeah,
he's in his mid-30s, and I get it. Like that's his thing. That's what he gets paid for. But like at some point, like he's not going to be able to keep up with the better players that he has to guard. So whatever. I'll get to Miami when I get to Miami. But okay, so my number 7, I'm in agreement with you. I actually have Toronto Raptors. Piggyback everything you said. Second year Scotty Barnes, depending on how much he grows, depending on the next step that he takes this season. The Toronto Raptors, man, they just play hard, man. Like the talent isn't all there, but the way they play and the effort, it gets them in the play-in/playoffs almost every season. Like legitimately, all they do is play effort. And I've heard a million times all these talking heads inside the NBA and other shows, everybody's saying that effort is a talent. And it's like all you gotta do is give a shit. And if you give a shit and you have some sort of talent, then you could actually be like optimistic of where you're going.
Especially in the regular season. And one of the things that the Raptors have that almost no other place can say is they have home country advantage. They're playing in Toronto. They still have the vaccine mandate in effect. So, you catch Kyrie on the wrong night, you're going to be able to play against shorthanded teams. And one of the things that I will also say about this team is they have arguably the best home court advantage in the entire league, outside of maybe Boston. When it comes to just a rocking playoff game, Toronto fans are as rowdy as they get because that's the only team in their entire country.
No, 100% agrees with you. The last thing I'll say about Toronto is Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam is their best player on the team. Scotty Barnes obviously is going to take it from him soon, but as far as right now, this season, Pascal Siakam is the best player on the team. He's peaked. To me, he's peaked. Like, everybody's saying that, like, oh, they could see him taking the next step, like really getting in that top 10 of the league. I'm like, no, he's done. The way he plays, I'm like, no. Like, you could, every time he drives to the lane, he's either turning, he's doing that spin move, and he's looking for contact. And I'm like, add more to your game, bro. So, like, at this point, I think he's peaked. And if your ceiling is, let's see how far Pascal Siakam can bring us, like, you're not really going far. And that's on the Toronto Raptors. Me moving forward, my number 6. I'm really interested to hear what you say. I got Boston.
Okay.
I got Boston. It might be a little bit lower than other people, but I mean, if you've been living under a rock, you've been hearing about Ime Udoka's situation. And he got suspended for the whole season. So, I mean, the players, they're going to be able to play, okay? If you're a basketball player, you play the game. It's okay. And coaches at this point of the NBA, like, coaches are more of an ego manager than more of a X and O's kind of coach. Like, at this point, of the NBA and just basketball in general, coaches aren't really there to give you a play or draw something up. They're just more there to manage, like, the Russell Westbrooks and LeBron James and know how to put this player with that player. A lot of things, but they have a lot of things going on. Like Robert Williams, he's going to be out until like January. Like, that's going to hurt him a lot. Robert Williams is the best around the rim protector, obviously. Super athletic, man. Last season when I saw him in the regular season when he was healthy, like, he just popped out to me. He's like a pogo stick, man. Just jumping up and down, dunking everything. Great defensive rim protector. Also, so Robert Williams being out is a domino effect. Al Horford is going to have to play more minutes. Yeah. Al Horford is like past 35. And like him playing meaningful minutes in a regular season, an 82 game season, if he doesn't get injured, and then you're expecting him to also, depending on how Robert Williams look, you're going to be depending on him to contribute to the team. Like, I don't think Al Horford can do that, man. Like, it's too much on his body. A big offseason pickup, Malcolm Brogdon. But the thing is, Malcolm Brogdon, I get why he fits the Boston system. I get it. But the thing with Malcolm Brogdon is he's a bit injury prone. Like he's had injuries that's taken him out.
He's played a total of 100 games over the last 3 seasons.
There you go. Like I don't think I need to say anything more than that. Like it's a big question mark with him. If he's healthy and he's able to play like most of the season, I could see it working, and I could see it working very well. But again, it's a big question mark if we can't put our money on it. Well, me personally, I can't put my money on it. Jason Tatum, I do feel like, oh man, but this like I saw them like during the media day, and I saw them give like their interviews, and Jason Tatum, like to me, the way he sounded was like he was just like so disappointed in the whole Ime Udoka situation. Like for me, I could tell, I feel like it really hit him hard, and like it really affected him. So I don't know how that's gonna affect him in the season. I mean, obviously the season could start and he could be like the leading MVP voter, but we don't know. And as far as like his showing in the NBA Finals, like hopefully he comes back, that he has a mission. Like hopefully he wants to prove people wrong. Jaylen Brown and him, I do think that they've actually come to a point where they know how to play with each other and they're okay with each other. Real quick, what do you think about that? Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Do you think they're on the same page, or you still think there's a little you go, I go?
Yeah. Obviously, for much of last season, there was the question for the first half of, is Jaylen Brown going to get traded? Now, fast forward to this offseason, the Boston Celtics may have sustained the worst September right before the start of the season of any team that I can remember in recent years, because not only was there the Ime Udoka and Joe Mazzulla coaching swap after that alleged suspension, you also have them losing Danilo Gallinari to a season-ending injury over the summer. And they bring in Brogdon, who already has question marks over his health. And you're talking about a team that has just come off of an NBA Finals berth, but as we've seen in recent years, going back to the finals for 2 straight seasons is way harder said than done, because you don't get a full offseason to recoup because you have less rest than every other team besides the winner of the NBA Finals.
Great call.
So I think that this team, while they do have a pretty easy schedule to start the season, they could mess around and start the season, 14-4 or something really strong right out of the chute. But 6, that's a bit low. I understand the arguments, given the fact that I just laid out the arguments as well as you for them having an underwhelming season and just having one of those NBA Finals hangovers.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, outside of this past season, they've been basically a 6 seed for much of the Tatum and Brown era to this point. But both of those guys have made strides in their games. Tatum's a superstar now, and Jaylen Brown is a guy who could mess around and lead the team in points this season, because Jason Tatum is now taking on the superstar role of being not only a scoring threat, but also a facilitator.
Playmaker, right?
Playmaker. Since LeBron James came into the league in 2003, Tatum this past offseason became the first player not named LeBron to have led the entire playoffs in total points and assists.
Oh, wow.
So while the turnovers were a huge problem, and he had the most turnovers of any player in an entire playoff run ever, he broke actually LeBron James' record from 2018. But both guys had the responsibility of doing it all offensively for their team.
Right.
And now I expect to see him take strides more as a rim finisher. That was the big problem in the finals. If there was anything that I could say to Jason Tatum, it wouldn't be continue to focus on your pull-up three-point shot. He shot pull-up threes last year at a 41% clip. That already is in the top 2 percentile in the entire league among guys that shoot it that much. However, you're a 6'10 guy, and you're expected to be as strong going to the rim as, say, a Kawhi Leonard or even a Kevin Durant. Become a better 2-point shooter, because I don't think it's realistic to think that you're going to be a 41% level of like Steph Curry guy shooting the ball from 3. So I understand that those numbers are probably going to come back to earth a little bit after the really strong second half that they had last season. And now going this year, they have sky-high expectations. They're actually the highest projected win total team of any team in the entire league going into this season at 54.5. In order for them to exceed expectations, they have to win at least 55 games.
Yeah. Just a little bit of a devil's advocate towards your finishing at the rim, especially in the finals. What do you say towards his shoulder injury? Because it was a legit. I think was it a separated shoulder or it was like a some sort of other
It was
shoulder
just
injury?
a normal shoulder contusion. I mean, I'm not going to say that it was a shoulder injury versus just the wear and tear of the NBA playoffs. Like,
Mm,
people forget that basketball is a contact sport. It's not football, but it's also not baseball.
true.
You're going to get hit. Everybody plays physical. You're going up against the Warriors, for God's sakes. They're a team that is known, quite frankly, because they have Draymond Green on their team. You're going to take some hard fouls every now and then. And yeah, you're going to get bumps and bruises, but it's the NBA playoffs, and that's to be expected.
All right. All right. So that's my number six, Boston Celtics. If you want to get at me in the comments, go ahead. I'm here to engage. Micah, my guy, give me your number five and your number four. Hit me with it.
Okay, so moving ahead to number 5 here, I actually have the Brooklyn Nets. You're lower on the Boston Celtics. To me, that is the Brooklyn Nets. Outside of their top 3 guys, I really don't think that this is a very strong roster. And I say the top 3. I mean, going ahead and including Ben Simmons. I still think that Steve Nash is one of the weakest coaches in the NBA when it comes to the X's and O's and being able
Damn.
to play guys the right way. I also think that just the idea that the Kevin Durant trade request is just going to be swept under the rug. He's not going to just return to the team and everything is going to become great once again. They haven't been great since they had their big three with Harden and Kyrie, as well as Kevin Durant, but they were trying to become the first team in the history of the NBA to have won a championship with a bottom 10 defense. Now, do I think that they're going to be a bottom 10 defense again this season? Yeah, probably. One of the reasons why I have them this low is because I still don't buy the fact that you can stop some of these great teams with great big players if you don't have a legit big center. So Nick Claxton, unless he becomes great or at
Not
least decent, you're not talking about that guy. And then I mentioned this, yeah, Kevin Durant is still going to return to the team and still probably going to score 27, 28 points a game. Like, it's nothing. He's Kevin Durant. But at the same time, is that going to equate to being arguably the best player in the world level? I don't think so. This is the Eastern Conference. And one of the things that you'll hear players mention about why it's different in the East versus the West is because in the East, you look up this season, the Miami Heat, the Cleveland Cavaliers when they were healthy last season, the Milwaukee Bucks, even the Philadelphia 76ers, all of them are teams that are centered around being great in the defensive interior. This is one of the weaknesses of the Brooklyn Nets and why I think that they're on the outside looking in of the premier teams in the East.
all right. That's your number five. What about number four, my boy?
Number 4, I'm going to go with a pretty standard team that I think acquired the most versatile player of any player movement this offseason, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland Cavaliers last season, when they were healthy with their 2 bigs, Mobley and Allen, were the number 3 defense in the league, and they were even the number 1 ranked team standings wise in the East for almost the first 2 months of the season last year. So you put all of those pieces together with the team last season that had one question mark, which was outside of Darius Garland, where is your secondary shot creation now coming from? Well, they answered that question. They actually made Darius the number 2 by bringing in a player who, on any given night, like I mentioned with Jimmy, can look like the best player on the floor because he can just rack up the points. And he's been a 41% deep shooter over the last 3 postseasons combined on pull-up threes, taking almost 10 a game. So adding a player that can space the floor alongside really good interior bigs and Darius Garland, that's a huge plus and an upgrade. I think that JB Bickerstaff has done a great job rounding out the rest of the roster. Now, the one question that I will have is who is the 5th starter? Is it Karis LeVert or Isaac Okoro? Do they choose to say, we're going to go with the more defensive-minded guy because we need guys to throw at Tatum and KD on any given night? Or are we going to pack the offense with just another guy that can put the ball in the deck and get to the rim? Either way, this team is one of the best team defenses in the league. We saw when they were healthy last year. They were the number 2 ranked defense. They were number 1 in defensive efficiency allowed in the paint last season. Evan Mobley is quickly becoming one of the better defensive players, not just interior defensive players in the entire league, because he's 6'10", 6'11", can guard basically 1 through 4, if not 1 through 5. And now you basically throw in a guy who is going to take your offense from being average to at least a top 8 to 10 offense in the league, already knowing that you're going to be one of the 5 best defenses. That efficiency totals to a team that is going to be among the best, at least on paper. So in the regular season, when teams are not trying quite as much as they will in the postseason, even if you don't have the top end talent and just have like a superstar or borderline superstar, you can still rack up wins.
100%. And you said something very important that I'm going to be saying a lot moving forward in this rankings. Regular season over playoffs. We are talking about the regular season right now, and they are 2 different seasons, and that's all I say. We'll get into it later.
Effort wins in the regular season.
True. Okay, so that was your number 5. Number 4, I'll give my number 5 and number 4. Number 5, again, we are in agreement. I have the Brooklyn Nets, echoing everything you say, the whole Kyrie, KD, and Ben Simmons. We haven't seen Ben Simmons play in a year and a half. Like, that's a question mark. I mean, he's healthy now, hopefully, and mentally we'll see if he's there. So the thing is with Ben Simmons, though, like, he does fit because he does not have to score on this team. Like, what he has to do is what his skill set is. His skill set is being one of the when he was with the Sixers and healthy, he was one of the best playmakers I've seen in a while. And on top of that, 6'10", like he was able to post up. I mean, he should have been able to post up smaller guards. And also another point that you brought up, Steve Nash. We don't know if he's a good coach, and that playoffs last season was just a huge. It was a bad look for him, man. It was a really bad look for him. So hopefully he's learned a little bit from his mistakes, and he's gonna, from experience, he knows how to use KD and Kyrie a little bit better. The beginning of this podcast, I told everybody how we got together. I put a clip from my episode saying that KD is top 3. I'm standing on that. Real quick, where do you have him?
I currently have KD as the 5th best player in the league. My top 5 in order are Giannis at 1, Jokic 2, Curry 3, Doncic 4, Durant 5, and LeBron 6.
LeBron out of the top 5, huh?
Yeah, for the first time since his rookie year. But yes.
No, I hear you.
You can't name 6 guys and say they're in your top 5. It's like how guys say what their top 10 players are in the league are, and then they say 14 guys. Can't do it.
No, 100%. Hey, man, well, we can argue that another episode. So, yeah, about Brooklyn Nets, number 5th seed, KD. Oh, man, I feel bad for him because last season was a really bad look for him as well. So hopefully they come back. And Kyrie, man, Kyrie is he's just a question mark. He's literally a question mark. Like, we don't know what kind of Kyrie we're going to get. He might come to the stadium and he might have a press conference regarding the earth being flat or ghosts and goblins. I don't know what's up with that guy, man. But what I do know is he is the best ball handler I've ever seen in my life. The best.
Is it even a question at this point? People always bring up Allen Iverson or the original Isaiah Thomas. Yeah. But one of the things that those guys lacked was, even if they can put on a show when it comes to the handles, they don't have the finishing package of Kyrie, who for much of his career has been not only the best rim finishing guard, but he's been better at finishing around the rim than guys who are 6'9", 6'10", who can go up and dunk it.
Yeah, no, Kyrie's layup package is insane, man. His angles, and if he breaks down his defender to get to the rim, like he's just the best handles I've ever seen, which again makes me like, I have him at the 5th seed, but they have KD, Kyrie, like that tandem, if they can figure their shit out, man, that's one of the best tandems we could see ever. Like KD, to me, top 3 player. Kyrie, I don't want to think about it. Just skill-wise, Kyrie's top 5 for me, man. Like, all right, so number 5, Brooklyn Nets.
Okay, one more thing before we move on there. Yeah, I'll just say this one more thing before we move on.
No, you go ahead.
When it comes to the Kyrie situation, or really his game in particular, here's one of the things that I think people need to remember. This is the NBA. This is not a pickup game. If you catch Kyrie on the blacktop, yeah, of course he's going to beat you up because he can do everything. But at the same time, he still has some deficiencies where he's not really good to great at anything in his game outside of scoring and shooting. So that's one of the things that the Celtics keyed into last year, which was, let's just make him a playmaker and make him uncomfortable.
Oh my god, and that Kyrie Boston Celtic saga, that's pretty
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Okay, so moving on, my number 4, I actually have the Miami Heat. So I think this season they're gonna from the way they ended last season in the playoffs, I think they're gonna give a little bit more of a shit than people expect. Bam Adebayo as well, like he's been going on this like I should have been a defensive player of the year parade, even though he missed like a good chunk of the season. So like I don't know why he's still crying about that, but I do see him like actually making it a point to go out there and try to win it. Kyle Lowry, he's supposedly air quotes, he's in shape. Hopefully that's gonna help with his health, and hopefully that's gonna help him play a good portion of the NBA season. Jimmy Butler, listen, man, Jimmy gets overlooked always when it comes to these top 10 players in the league conversations. And then in the playoffs, like you said, he erupts for a 40-point game in game 6 in Boston when they're down 3-2. Like Jimmy Butler, like to me, he's solidified top 10. Now he's definitely like 7 through 10, but he's in the top 10 for me.
Whoa. Okay, you mentioned 7 through 10. Let me name a couple of guys, and then you say if you would take them over him. Okay, first off, Tatum.
If I would take Tatum over Jimmy Butler,
Yeah. Okay, well, right now I'm saying Tatum is my 9th best player in the league. So I have Tatum at 9. I have Kawhi at 8 and Embiid at 7. Are you taking Butler over all of those guys?
No, I'm taking Butler over Kawhi because he doesn't have my respect and he's injury prone, and I could go into so many reasons as to why he created load management, and as far as that Toronto Raptor run, he sabotaged the San Antonio Spurs half of the season to not playing. So he was pretty much resting the whole time. When he went to Toronto, okay, he had half a season to develop chemistry and all that. But come on, man, how are you gonna sabotage the San Antonio Spurs and basically not play for a half of a season?
My my spiel with Kawhi is a little different now because I think that he still lives off of this reputation of the best two-way player in the game. To me, that's actually Jason Tatum now.
Mm.
Kawhi Leonard has not really played defense much at all since he joined the Clippers, and he's now become one of the best, if not the best, scorer off the ball the entire league because he's gotten stronger and looks like a total machine. But at the same time, he doesn't really play much defense anymore, unless when he really has to. And even then, he's only guarding guys for a couple key possessions here and there. But Kawhi is a legit 3-level scorer. He's in the 70, 50, 40 club, which is shooting at 70% at the rim, 50% from the mid range, and 40% from three. So he does everything asked of a true number one engine. And at the same time, yes, the minutes as well as the games played are real questions. But one of the things that you do know about him is in recent memory, he is one of, if not the best playoff performer in the entire league because he just takes his game to a new level in the same way that Jimmy does. But
Yeah, but Jimmy plays a lot more.
Kawhi just doesn't really have bad games in the playoffs.
Listen, man. Shout out to my friend Stefan in LA. He's the biggest Clipper fan I've ever met in my life. But right now, if I'm looking at today, my top 10, Kawhi is out because I'm not blind. If we're talking about skill wise, yes, Kawhi obviously has the talent to be in the top 10, but I'm going off of what have you shown me lately. And he has not been playing. He just hasn't been playing, man.
Played.
He just hasn't played. And honestly, we're gonna get into the Western Conference in another episode, but like I put money he's gonna get injured. I put money he's gonna get injured.
Yeah, one of the most shocking things before you go back to your top three here, over the last 4 seasons since AD joined the Lakers and Kawhi and PG went to the Clippers, Anthony Davis has played more games than Kawhi and PG.
Sheesh. That's crazy. All right, man. So going back to the seedings, yeah, number 4, Miami Heat. And yeah, the reason why I have them a little bit lower is just like they're just not gonna care about the seeding as much. They're gonna try and like save their bodies, keep them fresh because they know that the playoffs, like you said earlier, heat culture. They're trying to really peak right before the playoffs, going into the playoffs. And yeah, they're definitely pissed off the way I believe that they should have beat Boston. That they shouldn't have. Boston definitely should have won, but I feel like they should have taken care of Miami a little bit sooner. But the ego of Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo, everybody's like, oh, they don't believe in us. So they're gonna come. They're gonna be a little bit more pissed, and yeah, they're just not gonna care about the seeding as much though. Okay, so Micah, you're up, my guy. Number 3 and number 2.
So number 3, I actually have the Boston Celtics. So
Okay.
I have to speak about them in a little different terms than most because I actually work for a top media affiliate of them.
Oh yeah.
There are, excuse me, yeah, I can't defame them, but there are sides to the Joe Mazzulla and Ime Udoka situation that have not even been released by Shams or Woj at this point that I'm not even licensed to talk about. Like, it is a very messy situation.
Jesus.
And at the same time, though, the core is still there from the Boston Celtics finals run last year. They're going to get Robert Williams back probably the first of the year, as you mentioned. But until then, they really only have 7 guys that they actually trust. And whether or not Sam Hauser can add some much needed shooting that they lacked during the finals last year when their offense would just become super stagnant and it looked like just my turn, your turn, back and forth. They are going to be much more fluid offensively to start this season. And they start out with a really friendly schedule outside of opening night. And I expect them to be back in the top 3 this season, given the fact that Tatum and Brown, you can make the argument that going to this season, are they a better tandem than Kawhi and PG? That's a legitimate discussion, given the fact that both of them basically play the same positions as the other two. You stack those 2 cards up, who would you rather take?
I'm taking Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not even thinking about it. Go ahead though. Sorry.
Yeah, no, there you go. I mean, that's one of the questions where you could pose it to 100 different guys who follow the NBA and you might get 50-50 in terms of their answers. So going to this season, they really only have 7 guys that they trust until Robert Williams returns. But outside of those, among those 7 guys, they are top to bottom as good as you could possibly have. You have so much in the way of shot creation and shot making. You also have so much in the way of being able to slow guys down defensively. This was the best team. This is the best defensive team in the league last year, even after starting out the season 12 in defense up until the second half. So everything is there when it comes to the same formula that was able to push them across the finish line last year. But now they just have to replicate that same success. I don't think that they will finish as the number 1 team in the East and not with the highest win total in the entire league, but they are still going to be a very good team.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously you and I could be wrong. We're just giving our takes, but there's just too much noise around them right now, man. It's just too much noise around the Boston Celtics. That's why I have them again 6th. And I just I could see them landing top 3 in the East. I could see it. They have all the talent in the world, with especially Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. But man, I just don't know how they're gonna react to this. And it's not like a coach had a bad season and then you fire him, trying to get a new coach, new voice. I get it. This is just this might be unprecedented, man. We've never seen anything like this. And then Ime Udoka, literally a rookie coach with the in-season turnaround that he had, bringing them to the finals. And you could feel how much the presence he had, just turning that for that season, turning that culture around and bringing them all the way to the finals. And now you're not going to have that at all.
They were the first team in league history to have had an 800 win percentage or better after starting out the first half of the season under 500.
Sheesh. Yeah, man. If you want to say anything else about the beloved Celtics, or if you want to move on, whatever you got.
Yeah, beloved Celtics. I'm working for them professionally. They are not my team by any means, though.
Utah, baby. Utah Jazz, yes, right?
I'm still a Utah Jazz fan. I will follow them through and through. It's going to be a tough season, to say the least, coming up. But at the same time, if it winds up Victor Wembanyama wearing arguably some of the most disgusting jerseys in the league now, the new look is just terrible, in my opinion. But
not great.
Yeah, it's not great. No. But yeah, moving on to the number 2 team on my end, I have the Milwaukee Bucks finishing as the number 2 team in the East. I think this is one of those teams where we know exactly what we're getting, and whether or not they finish with the 1 seed or the 4 seed, whatever it may be, they feel like they have as good of a chance as any team in the league to win in the postseason. Why? Because they have the best player in the league. And when you have the best player in the league where there's only 10 guys on the floor, automatically you have the upper hand in the 7-game series. Now, given the fact that he has tasted blood when it comes to winning an NBA championship, and that feeling that only a handful of guys have ever felt in league history, coming off of the way that things finished last year without Chris Middleton, this is a team that thought that they were going to gentlemen sweep the entire conference into the finals. They thought they were going to go 5 games against the Bulls, 5 against the Celtics, and 5 against the Heat. Now you have to go into this season thinking that you have the best player in the world on a revenge season. It's as scary as it can be.
What do you think about if Chris Middleton was healthy?
Like I said, I thought that they were going to gentlemen sweep the entire East. That's what I had been hammering down to people the entire season, basically, which was this team started out 12-0 when Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis played. So as long as their top 3 guys were on the floor, they were winning games by an average of 14. And then obviously injuries happen, and that goes out the window. But anyway, I mean, they were in a game 7 against a team that was number 1 offensively and defensively for the second half of the season. And even then, it took basically the Boston Celtics having a 7 3-pointer performance in a game 7 by Grant Williams just to knock them out.
Right? Yeah, a miracle. I mean, I definitely would have had Milwaukee beating Boston if Middleton was healthy, but I think Boston would have made it a little tough. I mean, 6. It's not really much of a difference from 5, but I think it would have been a little tough. Yeah, I mean, if you want to say anything else about your Bucks.
I think that was it. Honestly, the moves that they made this offseason, I like bringing in Joe Ingles, assuming that he's able to be somewhat like he was in Utah before the ACL tear.
Yeah, man.
It's a huge question, especially given his age and how he's not really known as much of a mobile player. So I don't think it'll really hurt him terribly. He's just being brought in to shoot the ball and be able to run a couple of pick and rolls alongside Giannis, where you have arguably the best lob finisher in the league if you can just give it to him in the right spot. Those are things that Joe Ingles does terrifically. He was a 47% three-point shooter on 5 attempts a game just 2 seasons ago. He's even better than that as a catch-and-shoot guy. He is a lefty, which adds a new dimension to the way that guys have to guard when it comes to playing those high screens. You have to overload the wrong side because you know that at any moment he can get a shot off, and it's butter most of the time. So adding that new dimension to a team that was just lacking three-point shooting, their spacing in the finals was atrocious. And that was one of the things that got them into not in the finals, in the series against the Celtics. Yeah. It got them into so much trouble is that the Celtics could just key in on Giannis more than you would ever hope that the other team would be able to.
And Giannis still took him to 7. Yep. Giannis is a monster, man. Okay, so for my number 3, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. For me, they're kind of the same boat as the Miami Heat. They don't really care about seeding. They just want to make sure that they have their all their main players fresh for the playoffs. The addition, like you said, with Joe Ingles, it could be a good addition, but coming off a torn ACL with already his lack of, like, I guess, athleticism and just fluidity. Yeah. Like, I don't know how much that's really going to affect him. If he's literally just to shoot, I think he'll be okay. But again, once you come back into the season from a torn ACL, it's not like you come back and then you're good. You have to come back, play a certain amount of games just to feel kind of like yourself. So, I mean, right. If Joe Ingles was healthy, man, that would have been a great pickup. So we're going to have to wait until next season for that. I got Giannis as the best player in the league, like hands down, straight domination. And like you said, he's out for blood, revenge season. He wants that chip again. He just doesn't give a shit, man. Like he's like, yo, he's scary, bro.
Every time that he talks, you hear how dangerous he is because he still looks at himself as a humble guy. Like, you hear him talking about the word skill, which I think is honestly one of the more dangerous terms that people use in basketball circles because it can twist a person's view of somebody's game. There is skill in being able to take the ball from half court to the rim in 3 steps. You have to be able to get better physically. It takes skill to be able to lift weight So why? You do it to get better. You make your body stronger. And man, we say the word Greek freak about him. How about just freak? I mean, the guy is unstoppable, as you mentioned, and he's now getting better as a mid-range shooter and free throw shooter. I don't expect him to get much better at this point as a three-point shooter, but I legitimately don't think that there would be any way to potentially guard him. Like, imagine if he came back this season as he has every year with a new dimension to his game. Last season, it was the turnaround from the baseline, as well as just if you leave him be, he shot the mid-range shot at 42% last year. That's league average. If he were to shoot the three-point shot at 36%, which is league average, you would be talking about a guy who would be scoring 32 points a game like it's nothing. 32 points per game on like 28 minutes.
Do you think that's what he added to his game this season? Like just to be a little bit more respectful in the three-pointer?
I think that that's probably what he focused on. If there was anything, though, that I would tell him to lean more on, though, I would say it's just the free throws. I mean, if you were to come back this season and became an 80% free throw shooter, it's game over.
Yeah, I mean, last season when he came into the season showing a little bit better of a mid range and a shooting, like I was like, oh my god, like this is gonna be a wrap. This is gonna be a wrap. Like, and he was doing like turnaround fadeaways. I was like, oh,
that's what
man.
He hit in Game 6 in the closeout game against the Suns. He was making these baseline turnarounds where you're like, oh, well, if you have to respect his shot, he can just take one step and go right by you to the rim like it's nothing.
100%. All right, so I'm moving on. I'm going to my number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. I'm going Sixers. Am I happy with that? Not just. I don't think happy is the right word, but man, yo, James Harden, he's just not. I'm so not James Harden. Like, I will never be a James Harden fan. But again, we're talking about regular season. Supposedly, he's lost 100 pounds. He's definitely coming in, showing everybody that he's still a top player in the league after everybody has pretty much written him off because of the hamstring injuries the last couple of seasons. So you have that aspect. You have Embiid, who, in my opinion, is ahead of Jokic as the best big man in the league. So I have him number 1. I have Jokic on number 2. I get it, man. I get it. There's an argument there.
Okay.
I
All
get
I'm
it.
saying is that this will make for a great pod if and when we do like the top 25 players in the league or so.
Micah, I'm with it, bro. If you just hit me, bro, I'm with the smoke. But anyway, I got Embiid as the best big in the league. You got the pickup of PJ Tucker, who's going to add more depth to your defense. And again, I just think that they're really going to go out and try and prove something. So James Harden, though, in the playoffs, James Harden, it's a guarantee he's going to choke. He is not going to show up in the playoffs. And he has not shown me anything to make me change my mind. Like, this upcoming season, great. I lost 100 pounds. You worked on your game. Great. I still don't think he's going to show up in the playoffs. Like, he's going to choke. He's not going to show up. Joel Embiid is going to have to perform by himself. And then, not by himself, but then you have Tobias Harris, who's always been a question mark. And we can talk about his contract, but I don't know, man. Oh, thank God I remember before I moved on. Tyrese Maxey is with Emmanuel Quickly. I think he's better than Quickly, but Maxey, man, he is coming on the scene strong. He is a perfect point guard who doesn't give a shit. And like, you could tell that he's not conceding to Harden. Like, if he has an open lane, if he has a shot, he's going to take it. His handles is good. It's not Kyrie level, but it's definitely decent. I just love his aggressiveness, man. And watching a few preseason games, I see the confidence in him has grown. And I actually saw a podcast that he did with Kevin Garnett, KG Certified. He was talking about Tyrese Maxey, and he was just talking about the big step that he took this past summer and what he worked on. He worked on his actual confidence, telling him that he's one of the better guards already in the league. And just off of last season alone in the playoffs, like, I saw that with my own 2 eyes. Like, he's definitely going to be, once he has a couple seasons in his belt, like, he's going to be something special, man. I really do believe that. Yeah, 76ers number 2. Are they going to win the championship? Hell no. I don't have that at all. They're definitely more of a regular season team for me. All right.
Yeah. As we mentioned, we've reiterated on this podcast, this is a regular season podcast. We're not forecasting playoff translation and the ability to take your game to the next level there. This is strictly what happens during game 1 through 82. And when it comes to my top team in the league, this is my number one team in the regular season. I'm
Right.
going to play along right with this. I have the Philadelphia 76ers finishing number one in the East like they
I can see
were
that.
2
Yeah.
seasons ago. This is the best roster that you can say that Embiid has played with,
Embiid.
at least since they had Butler and Simmons that year. If not for just Kawhi's shot falling, I think that they probably go on to beat the Raptors in overtime. They came back in that game, and it looked like they were on the verge of that happening. But the PJ Tucker move, I like. I love bringing in D'Anthony Melton as well. I think
Good
that that's
call.
a move that's going to hurt the Memphis Grizzlies. D'Anthony Melton is probably the best backup point guard outside of Tyus Jones, who was also on the Memphis Grizzlies last year. So you now bring in another backcourt weapon outside of just Harden and Maxey, which is something that this team lacked last season. They also lacked in the way of depth at the perimeter defensively. So you address that issue, and you now have a legit good small lineup that you can throw out there, even if Embiid is still playing the five. You can have 4 guys that are 6'8" or less, and you can still 4 guys that are 6'8" or shorter, still be able to cover a lot of ground defensively and optimize your offensive engine, because Harden and Embiid is the best pick and roll duo in the league. And outside of them now, Maxey is a terrific catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He shot at 42% last season. Is that number going to go up? Well, probably not, but it doesn't need to. 42% is among the league's best. So
Yeah.
him getting better off the dribble, being more aggressive, which is not anything you've ever had to tell him, because Tyrese Maxey, if there was arguably one knock on him at this point, it's just the fact that he's always going 100 miles an hour. If you could teach
Yeah.
him body control and his ability to be able to get to his spots in a more controlled fashion when he needs to, that would be even better. But one of the great things that Harden makes your team better at is instantly makes your team a better team in transition. And last season, they were among the slowest teams in the league. Maxey's ability to go 0 to 100 instantly is a nice contrast. And that's one of the things that D'Anthony Melton brings as well. So when the bench unit is on the floor for those 10 to 15 minutes per game, when it's their show, they are going to be able to play a contrasting style of faster basketball, which works for Melton and Maxey as a nice ability to throw a wrench in the plan for the other team, who is just trying to slow down and play to Harden and Embiid style of grinded out half-court basketball. So I love the versatility and diversity of this team, because you're able to get a lot of different shooters on the floor. Furkan Korkmaz is back and healthy. When he was shooting the ball terrifically, they were a much different team. That was one of the reasons why they just came up short last year, is they didn't have much in the way of shooting. Now, D'Anthony Melton is also a great shooter. PJ Tucker, again, corner 3-point
Corner
shooter.
three. Yeah.
It's the most dynamic shot in basketball outside of, a dunk, a layup, or a free throw. So you're adding places that you needed to get better. They've addressed some of those issues, and they now have a roster that I think is going to be the best in the East in the regular season.
Yeah, man, I could see it. I could definitely see it. I'm not gonna argue against you. Two things before I give my number one. The fact that they chose Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler is a travesty. A travesty. A travesty. After that, we did not highlight the leader, not the leader, but the coach of the team, Doc Rivers. Again, this is a regular season podcast, so
You do
yes.
know that Doc Rivers is at his playoff woes. He is the all-time leader in blown 3-1 leads as a coach, and he's also the all-time leader in Game 7 Ls.
And he just joined the best coaches list. What was that? The top 15 coaches or something?
Yeah, he did.
He literally has one championship under his belt.
I don't think that Steve Kerr was named to it, even though Kerr is now a 4-time champ as a coach.
So he has one chip under his belt, and the two stats that you just give us, the most 3-1 blown leads and most Game 7 losses. Like, how are you on the list? And he's still regarded as one of the better coaches in the league, but it's like, I don't know, people are just like putting him there. They're not really looking at his resume. So, I mean, that's something you definitely gotta playoff time. You definitely gotta just be worried. I would be. All right. So moving on, I got my number one. I actually have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like you said, yeah. They're gonna give a shit, man. Especially Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell, since pretty much he came onto the scene, his biggest knock is he doesn't play defense. And especially after these past playoffs against the Dallas Mavericks, like I believe, and now that he feels like he has enough help, I think for the regular season, most of it, he's gonna try and show everybody that like when he puts his mind to defense, he's gonna be like one of the better defensive players, trying to get steals and use his athletic ability. Evan Mobley is he's if he didn't get hurt last season, he would have got rookie of the year hands down for me. He's just extremely agile. He could guard 1 through 5. This is only going to be his second year. He's going to be expanding his game. Darius Garland is, to me, the best up and coming point guards. Not in any particular order. Emmanuel Quickly, Tyrese Maxey, and Darius Garland. Probably Garland leading that pack, but Darius Garland, man, he's going to be such a solid NBA player. And it's unfortunate because last season, the Cavs, before Jarrett Allen went down, weren't they number 1 seed in the East at one point?
They were the number 1 seed, and they were the number 3 defense in basketball.
Yeah, man. Then Jarrett Allen went down, and then they went all the way downhill to the point where they get eliminated in the play-in, and we didn't get to see Darius Garland in the playoffs, or Evan Mobley, because Evan Mobley, I think, would have been back at that time. But this time around, hopefully, if they stay healthy, that's why I have the number 1. Jarrett Allen he doesn't give a shit, bro. He's going for everything around the rim, which I love. He doesn't care if he's going to get on many posters, which he has been already. Like, he's going for everything, and I love that.
All of the best shot blockers get put on posters. Why? Because they're going for the ball.
Facts. And yeah, hopefully, I really want to see them have a really good full season. I want to see them healthy. I want to see because I can't really tell what their ceiling is right now. I really want to see most of the season, and if they're all healthy, I'll be able to get a good feeling of what their ceiling is. Caris LeVert as well, like you mentioned, you said that there's a little bit of an argument as who's going to be the 5th player, Okoro or Caris LeVert. If it was me, I'd put LeVert coming off the bench. That would be a great. That would add more depth to your bench. And he's a good offensive player. We've seen him play with the Brooklyn Nets and what he did there. So all in all, man, Cleveland Cavaliers number 1. They want to prove that last season before I guess Jarrett Allen went down, not a fluke. Donovan Mitchell actually has something on his mind, playing defense, and Darius Garland's going to come on strong. So we did it, Micah, my guy. We did it. We ranked the Eastern Conference 15 through 1. I think at the end of this upcoming season, I think we'll have like a mini pod seeing where we landed. But yo,
Absolutely.
And this is part 1.
One of the best review exercises in the NBA is going back and looking at what you said before the season, because not all of the takes are going to age well. But
100%.
If you hit on a bullseye, then you feel like, oh, I said that before it happened, and now I get to stand on it.
100%. So for the listeners and viewers, this is part 1 of a 2-part podcast. Part 2, we're obviously going to be talking about the Western Conference we're over the Western Conference, and that's very interesting. We have a whole lot of stories, narratives, all that good stuff. But Micah, before we sign off, I want to give you some time. Do you have anything that you want to share with the people, social media, a blog, anything you want to go, my guy?
Yeah. So I also run an NBA Instagram account called NBA Interact. I took some time off of it this past season because I was writing for another website, but I am now working at CLNS Media, which is the top Boston Celtics affiliate, and I will return to my NBA Instagramming days. Should be fun this coming season. I'm excited to get into some power rankings, articles, live posts, as well as just having people on. And I love media engagement. I love it when you guys comment and let me know what you're thinking. If you think one of my takes sucks, let me hear it.
Absolutely. Micah is here with the smoke, baby. Micah, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Again, this is not the last that we see of you, that we hear of you. We're going to see you again. But again, thank you for your time and your energy. And I look forward to seeing you and hearing you again. Right before I sign off, again, for Time Flies, you'll be able to find all the links to Instagram, Twitter, the YouTube, the website. All the links are going to be in the description below. If you're listening to this on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Google, remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, remember to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the YouTube, trying to grow that as well. And also check the website. I dropped something that was near and dear to my heart. I dropped a Shia LaBeouf shirt. Shia LaBeouf is my favorite actor. putting everything personally that he's going through to the side, just focusing on the art. He's my favorite actor. If you like what you see on the website, support the boy. I got all different sizes up there. But until next time, Micah, again, thank you very much. And we'll check you on the next episode of the Time Flies podcast. Peace.